My name is Frank Miller. For 12 years, I was a deputy with the Klickitat County Sheriff's Office over on the Washington side of the Columbia River Gorge. I'm retired now. Medically retired, if you want the official story. The truth is, I just couldn't do the job anymore. Not after that night on Highway 18. I know how this is going to sound. I've gone over it in my own head 1,000 times, trying to find another explanation, a corner of my brain that could file it away under hallucination or trick of the light. But it won't fit. The memory is too solid, too clear. It's got weight. I spent my whole career dealing in facts, in things you can see and measure and write down in a report. And the fact is, what I saw that night was real. I'm telling this story now because I'm 58 years old. My hands shake a little when I lift my coffee cup, and I don't sleep through the night anymore.
I figure I've got nothing left to lose, and holding it in feels like swallowing poison, a little more each day. Maybe if I get it out, I can finally breathe again. Or maybe I'm just hoping someone else out there has seen something similar, so I know I'm not entirely crazy. Before I get into what happened, if you're new here, consider subscribing. I found that sharing these stories helps, in a strange way. And drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. It makes the world feel a little smaller, a little less lonely. All right, let me tell you what happened. It was late October, the kind of night in the Pacific Northwest where the chill isn't just in the air, it's in the ground, in the trees, in your bones. A damp, heavy cold that clings to you. The sky was overcast, no moon, no stars, just a thick, lightless ceiling of cloud that swallowed up the dark. I was working the graveyard shift, 10 to 6, which was mostly just driving the long, empty stretches of county highway, making sure no one had driven into a ditch or hit a deer. It was a quiet shift, which was usually how I liked it. Just me, the hum of the engine in the Crown Vic, the smell of stale coffee, and the endless ribbon of asphalt unwinding in my headlights. The call came in around 2:15 a.m. Dispatch said it was a single-vehicle MVC, motor vehicle collision, on Highway 18, about 6 miles past the turnoff for Skamania. A passerby had called it in, said they saw a sedan in the ditch but didn't see anyone around it and didn't want to stop. That's not unusual out here. It's remote. People get spooked being alone on those roads at night. The dispatcher didn't have much more. No report of injuries, no fire, nothing to make it a high-priority call. She gave it to me code 2. No lights, no siren, just go and see. So I went.
I remember turning onto Highway 18 and the feeling of the world closing in. That road is a tunnel even in the daytime. It's 2 lanes of cracked blacktop cutting through the Gifford-Pinchot National Forest. The trees, mostly Douglas fir and western hemlock, stand right up to the shoulder of the road. They're ancient, tall, and straight as pillars, and they block out the sky. At night, it's like driving through a black canyon. Your headlights just punch a little hole in the darkness ahead of you, and everything else is just gone. It's an easy place to feel small. The drive took about 20 minutes. On the way, I did what I always did. I drank my lukewarm coffee, I listened to the quiet hiss of the radio, and I thought about what I'd likely find. 99 times out of 100, a call like this is a deer strike. Someone comes around a bend too fast, a buck leaps out, and they swerve into the ditch to avoid it. Usually, the driver is sitting on the guardrail, smoking a cigarette and waiting for a tow truck, more annoyed than hurt. Sometimes the deer is still there, a sad, broken shape on the side of the road. It's all part of the job, routine. But that night, something felt off. I noticed it about 3 miles in. The silence. Usually, on a clear, cold night, you can hear the forest. Even from inside the car with the windows up, you get a sense of it. The call of an owl, the distant yip of a coyote pack. there was nothing. A dead, flat, listening silence that felt heavy. It was the kind of quiet that comes before a big snowstorm, when the world seems to be holding its breath. I remember tapping the radio just to make sure it was working. The dispatcher's voice came through, clear as a bell, asking for a status check from another unit on the other side of the county. So the radio was fine. It was the woods that were broken. My cop brain, the part that's always looking for threats, started to wake up. I slowed down a little, my hand resting on the gear shift, my eyes scanning not just the road, but the impenetrable black wall of trees on either side. It was just a feeling, a prickle on the back of my neck, the kind of animal instinct that tells you a predator is watching. I tried to dismiss it. You spend enough nights alone in the dark, your mind starts to play tricks on you. I saw the car a few minutes later. It was just where the caller said it would be, on the right side of the road, a late-model Honda Accord, silver. It had gone off the road nose first into the deep ditch that ran alongside the highway. The front end was crumpled pretty bad, accordioned into the muddy embankment. Steam was still ghosting up from the buckled hood, catching in my headlights. I pulled my patrol car up behind it, angled so my light bar would illuminate the scene, and killed the engine. The silence I'd felt on the drive down crashed in on me, absolute and profound. I grabbed my big 4-cell mag light from the passenger seat and stepped out. The air was frigid, and I could see my breath plume in the beam of my flashlight. The smell hit me first. The normal smells were there, wet earth, decaying leaves, the sharp, clean scent of pine. But underneath it all was something else. Something foul. The coppery and metallic tang of fresh blood mixed with a wet, musky smell. Like a wet dog, but heavier, gamier. It made the back of my throat itch. My first thought was the driver was badly hurt. I walked up to the Honda, my boots crunching on the gravel shoulder. The driver's side door was wide open, hanging slightly askew. "Sheriff's office," I called out. My voice sounded thin and small in the vast quiet. "Anybody here? You need medical assistance?" No answer. Just the soft drip of coolant from the car's shattered radiator onto the damp ground. I shone my light inside the car. The airbags were deployed, both driver and passenger side. 2 pale, deflated-looking mushrooms hanging in the cabin. The keys were still in the ignition. The dashboard lights were on. On the passenger seat was a woman's purse, unzipped, a wallet and a phone visible inside. But there was no driver. I did a slow sweep with the light. No blood on the seat, none on the deployed airbag. That was good, but it was also strange. People in accidents like this, they're usually dazed, confused. They don't just get up and walk away, leaving their purse and phone behind. "Hello?" I called again, louder this time. "This is the sheriff's office. I'm here to help." Silence. My training took over. Secure the scene, check the immediate vicinity. The driver could have been thrown from the vehicle, though the intact windshield made that unlikely. Or maybe they were disoriented and had wandered off into the woods. I started a slow walk around the car, my light cutting a bright white circle in the oppressive dark. The ground was soft and muddy, but the only footprints I could see were my own. I checked the ditch on both sides of the wreck. Nothing. No sign of anyone. It was like they had just vanished. I walked back to the road, standing in the middle of the empty highway. My headlights and the single beam of my mag light were the only sources of light in the entire world. I felt a profound sense of isolation, a feeling of being watched from 1,000 unseen eyes in the trees. The musky smell was stronger here, out in the open. I swept my light down the road, in the direction the Honda had been traveling. The beam sliced through the darkness, illuminating the yellow center line, the cracked asphalt, the glittering bits of reflective paint.
And that's when I saw it. About 50, maybe 60 yards down the road, there was a shape. A dark lump lying on the pavement, right on the center line.
My first thought, my most hopeful thought, was that it was the driver. They'd been thrown clear after all, or they'd gotten out and collapsed. "Hey!" I shouted, my voice straining. "Don't move! Help is on the way!" I started jogging toward the shape, my heavy boots slapping against the asphalt. The maglite beam bounced with every step, making the shadows dance. As I got closer, the shape resolved itself. It wasn't a person. It was too big and the proportions were all wrong. It was low to the ground, a shaggy, dark mass. My brain, desperately trying to find a box to put this in, offered up the next logical explanation. It was the animal the car had hit. A big one. A black bear, maybe. Or a massive elk. That would explain the wreck, the smell, the whole scene. My jog slowed to a cautious walk. I've been on enough calls with injured wildlife to know how dangerous they can be. A wounded bear is one of the most unpredictable things you can face out here. "Easy now," I said, talking to it, or maybe just to myself. I kept the light trained on it. I was about 30 feet away now. It wasn't a bear. A bear is a solid, rolling mass of muscle and fat. This thing was leaner, more angular. It was covered in thick, matted fur that looked black in the stark white light, slick with something that wasn't rain. It was hunched over, its back to me, and it was twitching. Little shudders ran through its body. It was alive. I unclipped the strap on my holster, not to draw, just to be ready. It's a habit. A sound escaped the shape then, a low, guttural noise. It wasn't the angry huff of a bear or the pained cry of a deer. It was a wet, ragged sound, a desperate gasp for air that ended in a low, rumbling growl. It was a sound of pure agony. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the silent night. Something was deeply, fundamentally wrong here. I took another step, then another. I was about 15 feet away now, close enough to see details that made the hairs on my arm stand straight up. The fur was coarse, almost like a wolf's, but patchier. Underneath, I could see glimpses of dark, leathery skin. The smell was overpowering, a thick stench of blood, wet fur, and something else. Something acrid and wild that I had no name for. And then I saw the leg. Its left leg was bent back at an angle that defied nature. The lower part of the limb was twisted completely around. The bone, a thick, white, jagged thing, had punched through the skin and fur just below the knee. Dark, syrupy blood was pooled on the asphalt beneath it. My stomach turned. No animal could survive an injury like that for long. My cop brain was still trying to function, to analyze. My human brain was screaming at me to get back in the car and drive away as fast as I could. I was frozen between the two, my feet rooted to the spot. That's when it moved. It wasn't a twitch this time. It was a deliberate, agonizingly slow motion. It pushed itself up slightly, bracing on its forelimbs. And what I had thought were forelimbs were not. They were arms. Long, powerfully muscled arms, covered in the same dark fur, ending in something that was not a paw. It was a hand. A 5-fingered hand, impossibly large, with thick, dirty fingers, tipped with what looked like yellowed, 2-inch claws. One of those hands was braced on the pavement, the claws digging into the asphalt. The other was clutching the shattered ruin of its own leg, in a gesture so humanly desperate, so full of pain, that it stopped my breath in my chest. The world seemed to tilt on its axis.
Every rational explanation my mind had served up evaporated into smoke. Bear, elk, feral dog. None of them had hands. None of them had arms like that. The creature let out another of those gasping whimpers, and with a grunt that seemed to tear from the depths of its chest, it turned its head to look at me. Time slowed down.
It felt like I was looking at it through a lens. Every detail magnified, burned into my memory forever.
The head was canine, unmistakably canine. It had a long, wolf-like muzzle, the black lips pulled back in a grimace of pain to reveal a row of thick, yellowed teeth. Not just canines, but incisors and molars that looked heavy enough to crush bone. Its ears were pointed, triangular, and flattened back against its skull, the way a terrified or aggressive dog's would be. But the eyes, dear God, the eyes. They weren't the simple, reflective discs of a nocturnal animal. They were set forward in the skull, more like a primate's, more like a man's. And in the beam of my flashlight, they glowed with a terrifying, molten gold light. But it wasn't just the glow. It was the intelligence behind them. I've looked into the eyes of cornered men, desperate men, killers. I saw all of that in its gaze. Pain, rage, and a cold, calculating awareness that chilled me to my very soul. It knew what I was.
It knew what the uniform meant. It knew I had a gun. It was 7, maybe 8 feet long as it lay on the road. If it stood up, I didn't want to think about how tall it would be. Its shoulders were immense, a solid slab of muscle that tapered down to a surprisingly lean waist and hips. It was built like a predator, but it was shaped like a man. A nightmare fusion of the two. A Dogman. The name just appeared in my head, dredged up from some forgotten corner of late-night radio shows and crackpot websites I'd always laughed at. I wasn't laughing now. We were locked in that standoff for what felt like an eternity. It was probably only 5 or 6 seconds. Me with my flashlight beam pinning it like a butterfly to a board. It, lying broken on the asphalt, its chest rising and falling in ragged, shallow breaths. The only sound was the drip, drip, drip of its blood onto the road. My brain was a useless, static-filled mess. All my training, all my years on the force, meant nothing in the face of this. This wasn't in the manual. Then its expression changed. The pain and fury were still there, but something else flickered in those golden eyes. Urgency. It broke eye contact with me for a second and looked past me, back down the highway, in the direction of my patrol car, in the direction of town. It let out a low growl, a different sound this time. It wasn't directed at me. It was deeper, more resonant. A warning. Then it did something that shattered the last of my composure. It slowly, deliberately lifted its uninjured arm, the one that wasn't clutching its leg. It was a gesture that took a colossal effort. It raised its hand, the one with those terrible claws, and it pointed. It pointed right past me, down the dark, empty stretch of Highway 18. Its gaze followed the gesture, burning with a fierce, desperate intensity. It held the point for a second, its arm trembling with the strain. Then it looked back at me. Its jaws opened slightly, and a puff of steam escaped into the cold air. The look on its face, if you could call it that, was unmistakable. It wasn't just a threat. It was a communication. It was a warning. It jabbed its finger one more time at the darkness behind me, then slammed its fist onto the asphalt with a wet, heavy thud. It was trying to tell me something. It was trying to tell me that the thing that did this to it The thing that could snap the leg bone of an 8-foot-tall monster was down that road. And it was coming. That single, impossible gesture broke the spell. The terror that had frozen me in place turned into a white-hot surge of adrenaline. My training, buried under a mountain of disbelief, finally clawed its way to the surface. My hand, which felt like it belonged to someone else, went to my hip. The sound of the holster's snap, breaking the silence, was like a gunshot. I drew my service-issue Glock 22, the familiar weight of it in my hand, the only real thing in a world that had gone completely insane. I brought it up, my hands shaking so badly I had to grip it with both just to keep it steady. The creature's eyes snapped from the darkness behind me to the gun in my hands. A new sound ripped from its throat. It was a sound that was both a bark and a roar, a noise so loud and full of raw fury that it felt like a physical blow. It echoed off the trees and vibrated through the soles of my boots. It bared its teeth completely now, a terrifying display of glistening enamel and dark gums. This was no warning. This was pure, unadulterated threat. You are a danger. It gave up on trying to stand. With a guttural snarl, it began to move. It used its powerful arms to drag its broken body across the road. The sound was horrific. The scraping of its claws on the asphalt was like nails on a chalkboard magnified 100 times. The wet, dragging sound of its useless leg, the grunts of pain and effort torn from its lungs. It moved with a terrifying speed, a grotesque, 3-limbed scuttle, heading for the darkness of the trees on the far side of the highway. I didn't shoot. I don't know why. Maybe it was the warning it had tried to give me. Maybe it was the look of agony in its eyes that was too intelligent, too close to human. Or maybe I was just so terrified that my finger wouldn't obey the commands my brain was screaming at it. I just stood there, gun up, watching it go. It reached the gravel shoulder, its claws digging in, sending small rocks scattering. It didn't pause. It hauled itself over the edge of the ditch and into the underbrush. There was a crash of breaking branches, a final, agonized roar that was swallowed by the forest, and then silence. The same profound, listening silence from before, but now it was filled with the creature's absence. It was gone. I stood in the middle of the highway for a full minute, my gun still trained on the spot where it had disappeared. My heart was a wild animal trying to beat its way out of my chest. My breath was coming in ragged, painful sobs. The cold night air felt like fire in my lungs. I slowly, mechanically, lowered my weapon and engaged the safety. My hands were slick with sweat, and they wouldn't stop shaking. The scene was exactly as it had been before, yet everything was different. The wrecked car in the ditch, the empty highway, the dark trees. But now the world had a new shape in it, a shape that would live behind my eyes forever. I walked, my legs feeling like lead, to the spot where it had been lying. The pool of blood was there, dark and thick on the asphalt. It was already starting to congeal in the cold, and there were deep gouges in the road surface where its claws had scraped. Physical evidence, proof that I wasn't insane. I backed away slowly, never taking my eyes off the tree line. Every shadow was a monster. Every rustle of leaves was its return. I got back to my patrol car, my movements stiff and robotic. I practically fell into the driver's seat and slammed the door, fumbling with the lock. I sat there for a moment in the dark, just breathing, trying to make sense of the impossible. The smell of it was on me, in the car, a musky, bloody taint. My hand reached for the radio mic. I clicked it on. My throat was dry. "Clickatat 34 to dispatch," I managed to say. My voice was a broken, reedy thing. "Go ahead, 34, the dispatcher's calm, normal voice came back. A voice from a world I no longer belonged to. What could I say? "Dispatch, I've located a what? A monster? A werewolf?" They'd have me in for a psych evaluation before my shift ended. They would take my badge and my gun. My career would be over. 34, I said, trying to force strength into my voice. I'm on scene at the MVC on Highway 18. Vehicle is unoccupied. I'm going to need backup and, notify Fish and Wildlife. I have signs of a large, aggressive animal in the area. Possibly a bear. It appears to have been injured. It was the most pathetic, cowardly lie I've ever told. But it was the only one that fit into the world of reports and regulations. It was the only story they would believe. My sergeant, Dave Sterling, arrived about 30 minutes later. Dave was a good man, a by-the-book cop who had seen just about everything. Or so he thought. He found me sitting in my car, staring into the woods. He took one look at my face, which must have been pale as a sheet, and his whole demeanor changed from routine to concerned. "Frank, you all right? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Something like that, Dave," I said. We went over the scene together. I showed him the blood on the road, the deep gouges in the asphalt. I showed him the drag marks leading into the forest. I told him the sanitized version, that I'd arrived, found the empty car, and then saw a huge animal on the road. I said it was dark, that I couldn't get a clear look, but it was massive. I told him it was injured and dragged itself into the woods. I told him it was aggressive, that it roared at me. I left out the hands. I left out the intelligent eyes. I left out the warning. Dave bought it, mostly. He agreed it was probably a big black bear, maybe wounded by the car and enraged. We searched the woods for 100 yards in, but found nothing. No tracks we could make sense of, no more blood. It was like the forest had just swallowed it whole. The official report listed the incident as a hit-and-run involving an unidentified large animal. The owner of the Honda, a 28-year-old woman from Portland, was declared a missing person. They never found her. Not a trace. I have my own theory about what happened to her. I think she hit it, got out of the car to check on it, and it reacted. But I could never prove it. That night was the beginning of the end for my career. I took a few weeks off for stress. When I came back, I wasn't the same. I couldn't drive those back roads at night without my skin crawling. Every shadow that flickered at the edge of my headlights was it. Every time the radio was quiet, I heard that pained, guttural growl. I started getting jumpy, seeing things that weren't there. Dave tried to talk to me, told me it was just PTSD, a normal reaction to a traumatic event. But he didn't know what I'd seen. How could he? I lasted another 6 months before I put in my papers for medical retirement. I couldn't be a cop anymore. A cop has to believe in a rational world, a world where things make sense. I didn't live in that world anymore. I lived in a world where 8-foot-tall wolfmen get hit by cars on lonely highways. I moved away from the gorge. I live down in the flatlands now, where I can see for miles and there are no deep, dark woods to hide things. But I never forgot. I can still see its eyes, that molten gold, filled with a terrifying mix of animal pain and human intelligence. And the warning, that's the part that really haunts me. For years I've wondered what it was trying to tell me. What could be out there in the dark that could do that to a creature like it? What was it so afraid of that it would try to warn a human, a creature it surely saw as a threat? I don't have any answers. I've spent years on the internet, falling down rabbit holes, reading witness accounts and folklore. There are stories, of course. People see things in the woods. But nothing ever quite matched the specifics of what I saw, especially the warning. I'm telling this now because the world feels darker than it used to, more unstable. You read the news, you see the way things are going, and it feels like something is breaking. There's a tension in the air. just like there was on that highway. A feeling that the world is holding its breath. And I can't shake the feeling that whatever that creature was warning me about, it's not in the woods anymore. I think it's here. I think it's walking among us. And I don't think a handgun is going to be enough to stop it. I don't know what I saw that night, not really. But I know it was real. And I know it was afraid of something. My biggest fear, the one that keeps me awake staring at the ceiling, is that someday soon, we're all going to find out what.